Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Charlene Sani, and today we'll be discussing the recipe to the ultimate digital experience, serving customer experience to transform DX. This webinar is brought to you by Sitefinity and our premium partner, Silvertech. We are recording today's webinar, and you'll receive a link via email after this session. The Sitefinity team has invited Silvertech and Home Street Bank to share their DX experience. Sitefinity, Silvertech, and Home Street Bank will introduce themselves, and then we'll move into the roundtable portion for the majority of the webinar. After the roundtable, we'll conduct Q&A. However, feel free to send questions along the way, and we'll try to respond to them in chat as they come in. So introductions. Today, I am your speaker, Charlene Sani. I am part of the partner development team here at Progress. Then we have Heather Barub, our Sitefinity Senior Sales Engineering Guru. And the next is our special guest, Chad Campbell from Silvertech, the VP of Sales, and Misty Ford from Home Street Bank, who is our Senior Vice President of Corporate Marketing. I'll turn it over to Heather to introduce Sitefinity.
Thanks, Charlene. Again, I'm Heather Burby, a Senior Solutions Engineer for Progress. Many of you are familiar with Progress, Sitefinity's digital experience platform, which has helped drive the evolution of the CMS market. Now with Gartner Magic Quadrant, that is focused on digital experience platforms, Sitefinity has really transitioned beyond content management to a complete solution for managing multi-channel digital experiences. As Progress's premium partner, Silvertech has extensive experience building solutions on a Progress Sitefinity platform. Chad, can you tell us a little bit more about Silvertech?
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, Chad Campbell, Vice President of Sales at Silvertech. Silvertech is a digital marketing and technology firm based out of Manchester, New Hampshire. We focus a lot on the financial industry, building websites, maintaining websites, hosting in high security, high availability environments in Microsoft Azure, and we help our clients to engage with their clients and prospects.
Hi, everybody. I'm Misty Ford. I'm the Corporate Marketing Officer at Home Street Bank, and we are a West Coast community bank. Our headquarters are in Seattle, Washington, and we serve customers and businesses with banking solutions as well as lending services as well. We have $8.6 billion in assets, and we have branches across the West Coast and in Hawaii. So Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, and then we have some offices on the commercial side in Utah, Idaho, and Texas.
So now let's shut off our slides and turn to the roundtable. My first question is for Chad. However, anybody can chime in here. Chad, Silvertech works with hundreds of banks and credit unions across the country. In your discussions with them, what are you seeing as a common thread or need as it relates to digital strategy and technology?
Yeah, I think that there's like three main pillars that run across the industry. There's varying degrees of different things depending on the bank size, their location, whether they're more commercial versus retail, their company culture. But the three main pillars that we hear over and over again and that we have to deal with over and over again are marketing. Marketing is really driving a lot of the website content, the engagement. They're responsible for the website. And they need to be able to do their jobs, which are high demand, and they're not just digital. They're doing stuff that's in branch. They're doing events and recruitment, all kinds of different things. So they really need the website to be a tool that's going to allow them to be able to do their jobs as marketers and do it well and easily and have it work reliably. One of the other pillars is security. IT and IS in a lot of banks and credit unions. I think we experienced this, Misty and I experienced this at Home Street, is a big part of websites for those groups. There's a lot of regulatory things that they have to go through, internal security checklists they have to go through. There are oftentimes a lot of changes that need to happen as the digital landscape changes, and maybe their internal systems haven't necessarily changed since the last time they built a website. So bringing those folks along and having their buy-in is very key 99% of the time when working in the financial services. And I think the last group, which is a little bit, less, but is still very, very important, is risk and compliance. There's usually compliance officers that need to understand workflows and audit trails and those types of things. So I think if you can cross or check those 3 boxes, you're on your way. And I think that's kind of an industry standard. There's obviously a lot of other things that go into it. Branding, your digital goals, personalization, what you're doing from a traffic perspective and campaigns and stuff like that. But those main 3 pillars are what we see over and over again.
That's great. I love about Silvertech is that you're putting the customer and the user first and analyzing everything. My second question for you, Chad, is based on HomeStreet's unique geographic reach, can you tell us how you use Sitefinity to personalize the customer experience?
Yeah, sure. I think, and Misty might want to chime in as well, but I mean, one of our main goals and one thing that's attractive about Sitefinity is how easy personalization can be. Obviously, it can get very, very advanced as well, but a big win for the HomeStreet team was, the fact that they're based in Seattle. Their previous website was definitely had a Northwestern feel to it from imagery perspective and things like that. And Misty and her team's goal was really, if people are in Hawaii, can they have landscapes that, look like Honolulu or Maui or whatever it might be, rather than, the Pacific Northwest. And the same thing for Southern California, where they have a larger group of branches there. Can we personalize the experience based on somebody's location, what the website is going to look like? And that was kind of the first starting point. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to grow personalization on the website as well.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in there. With the help of our new platform, we've been able to create 4 different homepages. So as Chad was saying, and we are at the moment only using the imagery portion of that, but into the future, some of our goals are to, when we have events that are specific to a specific region, like in Seattle, we have a big event called Seafair, and we then have the ability to highlight that event on those pages and not show that to folks in California and Oregon and Hawaii who obviously they're not going to make it to that type of an event. And then we also have a Bayfair event down in San Diego. And again, we'll be able to highlight those events on the homepage for those customers.
Great. I have a question for you, Misty. Can you talk a little bit about HomeStreet's challenges? What factors influence your decision to develop the new website?
Sure. So I joined HomeStreet about 2.5 years ago. And when I arrived, the website, I knew right away that we had some problems with the website, to say the least, right, Chad? So for example, when we were trying to publish something, we had a 24-hour publishing cycle. And obviously, when you're trying to move quickly with the website, and particularly when you're in a COVID type environment, which of course we were at that time, for us to try to put branch closure notifications up on the homepage was really impossible because we had this 24-hour content publishing cycle. We also did not have any way to really QA what we were doing because our QA environment wasn't in sync with our production environment. So that was a problem. The other thing that we had, other issues, and there were many, but other things that were problematic was our site speed. There had been so much custom code built into the site that it was slowing down the load time And in particularly, it was slowing down the load time for our branch lookup pages. So if somebody was trying to come to the website and find one of our branches, especially if they were on their phone, I mean, it was the spinning wheel of death would just like keep going and going and going. And so all those things contributed to a really poor user experience, and we knew we had to do something.
Right. And then it obviously impacted your daily operations while working with the outdated website, I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So things that that the business wanted, things that we knew we needed, such as one of the things that we launched with as part of the website was a new education center, which we knew and it had been on the project list for quite some time, but it was again hard to implement on the old platform. But we knew it would help us with our search engine optimization and would be a benefit again to the users, which is always front and center from our perspective when we're talking about a website. So yes, it was a project that we knew we needed to move forward on.
Great, great. Thank you, Misty. Sounds like you're ready to find a better fit for Home Street Bank. I do have another question for you. How did Home Street begin to prioritize and implement digital solutions that could easily scale and support customers' ever-changing requirements while also being productive for employees?
So our first step in the process was to issue a request for information, so an RFI. And we did that and received a number of vendor responses. And as Chad was saying, there were those 3 pillars. I completely agree with what he was saying in terms of those areas of expertise that we required. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we utilized, there were viable options. The one thing we loved about the solution that we chose was the experience in banking, the fact that they had a templated version that we could easily adapt, and that they could also help us influence our future growth because of their experience in banking. So things like the product tiles and showing how the different products stack up against one another. It's very different in banking how you would display that than you would say for a clothing store, obviously. So having that level of experience and understanding of banking, and as Chad was saying, we have a lot of regulations. Everything has to go through compliance. We need disclosures. We have a lot of things we need to follow, rules we need to follow that protect the consumer. And so having a partner that understands those limitations, it was important.
Yeah. All right. The next question, we're going to turn it over to Chad. Chad, Home Street and Silvertech ultimately chose the Sitefinity DX platform for the new website. What were some of the website features that Silvertech recommended?
Yeah, I think kind of to piggyback off of what Misty was saying, and when Misty and I were working through this together, we have a product that we've built for banks. As we started, we've been in business for 26 years. We've been working in finance for a really long time. You start to see those same themes over and over again of, you need locations, you need to manage your rates, you need to manage your staff, especially like wealth managers and mortgage lending officers and people that you want to have on the forefront of your website to kind of humanize the experience that you're going to have at the bank. And so we were building out modules and widgets and tools over and over and over again based on specific requirements. And what we found is that we really wanted to leverage Sitefinity and our experience as a Microsoft shop and a kind of with a product background and thinking from a development perspective and meld those two together to provide a platform which we call Kubera DX, which is built on Sitefinity. So we have things like Misty was talking about, comparison cards for different products, depending, and you can play with the content in there. You can do it based on the product itself and a rate, or that content, if the content strategy says it could be about where you are in your life, your life stage. Are you a student versus a commercial, a business owner looking for a commercial loan versus, somebody who's in retirement or in their prime earning years. So building out things like that, but then overlaying that compliance and risk piece with it. As Misty mentioned, we need disclosures on rates and things like that. So having a one-stop shop within the rates module that we've built that says, this is your auto loan rate for this type of auto loan, and this is the disclosure that goes with it. And then there's an audit trail of when that went live and when it was unpublished. So those types of things where we're looking at how folks like Misty and her team need, what the tools they need to do their jobs effectively, is kind of what we do with Kubera DX and Sitefinity. And the other good part about that package is that you do get the support from Progress and all the updates that Progress provide every year to Sitefinity, on top of the fact that we also are always adding different modules and updating those modules and widgets and things like that within Kubera, based on feedback we get from folks like at HomeStreet. And then in addition, it checks all those boxes. Sitefinity definitely checks the boxes with IT and IS. There's also a layer of managed services that go along with that, where we host in Microsoft Azure. Obviously, Sitefinity and Progress host in Microsoft Azure as an option as well. And by doing that, you're able to kind of check that IT, IS compliance and whatever their requirements might be specifically to that bank. And the last point I'll make on it is that it's quicker to market. We are not spending thousands of hours on custom development. There's upgrade paths. So we can really focus more on the content strategy, and then having a solid foundation to get folks like Misty, who was really had her back against the wall at the old site, get a new site up quickly. And now we can build off of that and grow.
Yeah, it's really an iterative process over time. So you kind of get that base going, and then you can continue to update as you see changes in the industry, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of our first goal after launch was really, we work with Misty's team on, digital marketing and paid media advertising and driving traffic. So, that's been our focus really for the last, year or so. And I think looking at the data from those types of things and starting to iterate on those is probably our next step as we move into 2023.
Great. Heather, moving to you, what do you think Sitefinity DX platform is a good solution specifically for financial institutions like HomeStreet Bank?
Yeah, so I believe financial institutions choose Sitefinity because Sitefinity really provides a secure and highly performant infrastructure, with an easy-to-use interface and the ability to really integrate and extend the platform. As we, talked about Silvertech being able to build on top Kubera DX, really being able to build in the tools and features that the financial industry needs. So it's kind of they're ready to hit the ground running when they start their implementation. You really have the ability to tie into industry specific needs, and we really enable financial institutions to truly deliver a unique experience to their customers. Security is key, so I just want to touch on that a little bit more. With security and data privacy, those are very integral to Sitefinity. With an enterprise grade security and compliance, you can really keep customers and branch data safe, with hardened security features and tools to meet regulatory compliance standards. So Sitefinity, we actually provide not only the infrastructure level security, but we provide a built-in security module. So it helps enable you to control the security and application level, threats. So being able to, set up HTTP security headers, redirects, refer validation, and prevent, popular security attacks like cross-site scripting, clickjacking, and code injection. Those are really important, and we give you the ability to do that right through the CMS user interface. Also, when you host with Sitefinity Cloud or Silvertech, you get that additional security layer that's on top of that from the infrastructure perspective. So all of our security experts are continuously reviewing and improving the setup of the hosted infrastructure to really ensure that your security is utilizing the up-to-date best practices and standards. Now, it's also important to note that Sitefinity is SOC 2 certified. So the Progress SOC 2 certification reports of Sitefinity cover things like security, availability, confidentiality. Those reports can be accessed on our website if anybody's interested. And beyond security, banks and credit unions, as Misty and Chad were talking about, they have, they typically will have a smaller team of people who are working to implement the site and manage the site. So they have a lot of different responsibilities outside of just managing the site as well. They have a lot of different roles that team will take on. So Sitefinity really allows marketers to update quickly and with minimal learning curves. So there's no programming knowledge needed. It also reduces their reliance on IT. So every time they need to make a little change, they don't have to go to the IT team. A lot of things they can do on their own through the CMS user interface. Now, Sitefinity also allows marketers to independently publish, personalize, and optimize online experiences. And even though you can do all that, Sitefinity still has permission models and roles management that you can set up within the system, as well as built-in audit trails. So that helps satisfy any compliance or approval processes that you may have in line. So through Sitefinity, we offer plenty of out-of-the-box features, but for marketing teams who work, within financial institutions or other industry-specific, verticals, you're always going to have industry-specific needs for different tools and integrations. And so what Sitefinity provides, we have a fully exposed API, and Sitefinity makes it very easy for developers to really integrate industry-specific systems or legacy systems and tools that you really depend on. And so these integrations might include things like lending applications, mortgage providers, third-party calculators, even different knowledge bases that you're pulling in knowledge-based articles from external locations, those types of things. And once you integrate important data for existing systems, you can also use that information to tailor, the customer's online financial experience, and also deliver, personalized content based on a customer's specific financial needs, as well as their location, as Misty was referring to, being able to identify where they are and really market to them and message to them appropriately. So whether they're looking, for instance, for a mortgage versus maybe a student loan, as you start to be able to identify that about the customers visiting the site, you're able to message and market to them those types of offerings that you have based on what they're looking for. Now, I believe these are some of the key reasons why financial institutions, often choose Sitefinity. So it's kind of, my take on it.
Thank you, Heather.
Sure.
That was super helpful. And we obviously heard a lot about the options that Sitefinity provides. Misty, what digital enhancement features get you most excited about the website?
I think things like, certainly the security is key, as Heather points out, and I need to stay in my lane because that's not my lane. So, but I do appreciate the importance of it, and our IT security team was very involved in the project, and I know Chad worked with them as well. So clearly a very important aspect of the site. In terms of, though, content, and I didn't fully answer your question about the optimization and how it helped our employees. So what I will share is, so as Heather was saying too, we have a very small team. So there's basically 2 people that are focused on sort of our digital world. And one of them, he's in charge of making all of the website updates, content updates, and then they share responsibility with digital marketing. So very small team, a lot of, obviously there's when you're covering an entire bank that has commercial lenders, mortgage lenders, retail branches, there's a lot of requests that come in for things that they want to update. And so having that ability to do that quickly and having a preview environment that you can then sit with compliance, we use this all the time now. We can sit with compliance and compliance can see the preview environment before we go live. That was not something we could do previously. And so that's helped us with our internal processes, making us more efficient, really making the whole bank more efficient because we can quickly turn something that we couldn't do before. So that's been huge for us. In terms of enhancements that we're excited about, I mentioned a couple, the geo-targeting. Heather mentioned things like pulling in third-party calculators. That's something that I know we wanted to do on the mortgage side that we haven't done yet. So that's something that we're certainly looking towards. And then I would love to take advantage of the persona type personalization that was mentioned. So it's a student that comes in, and how do we provide content that's specific to someone in that particular, time of life? Or somebody might be having a baby, and so how do you then help them with solutions that can support that particular time of life? Or in my situation, I have a daughter in college, and so what types of things would I like to see? So again, thinking about from a personalization perspective as each of these personas is exciting to me.
Great, great. Well, what advice would you give another bank or credit union that might be looking at a website in 2023 or 2024, but might not know where to start?
Yeah, I think it's really important to start with the end in mind. So what is it that you're trying to achieve, and what are your goals, and how does your website support the goals of your organization? I think that's really where you have to start. You have to start with, again, like thinking about, what do we want this to look like
Yeah.
when this project is complete, and then how do we grow from there, with the sense of, okay, it needs to be grounded in what are the business goals of the site, because a website really can help drive your business, whether it's for awareness or conversions, or again, you have to define what are your goals and then go from there.
All right, great, great.
Yeah, I think, I was just gonna say something about that, Charlene, if you don't mind. I think when we take over a site from somebody else, whether, in the financial institutions or financial space rather, or we have a client or prospect that, is looking more to differentiate themselves and to be different. We see a lot of not necessarily failed, but not ideal experiences that come out of that. I think you have to have those fundamentals in order to be able to then do that differentiation with your content, with your brand, with who you are in the community. And I think where a lot of financial institutions go wrong is they're trying to be different somehow. And I always equate it to grocery stores. Whole Foods is much, much different than Albertsons, is much, much different than Market Basket up here. But they all have the same fundamentals. And as a user, if you go in and the freezer section is first and the produce is last and everything else is in the middle, it's not going to make sense to you. But when you walk into a Whole Foods versus another grocery store, there is a different experience you're feeling and that you're getting. And I think that's where the content and your messaging and your brand comes in. But from a website perspective, to focus on the fundamentals so you can then do that work, I think is the way to look at it, and not the other way around. And I think we see that quite a bit. And I think if you're going to do a website project, resist that urge and really focus on that content piece.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah. Is there anything
I
would like to say to wrap up?
I was just going to say that one of our goals, and it was sort of a mantra that we used during the project, was to keep it simple. Because if you try to boil the ocean with a project like this, it can turn into a monster project. And so that was really our mantra: keep it simple. Let's take what was there, port it into the new environment so we can build on it from there. So that was really key. And we did have one little falter in that process during the project, as no project's perfect. So, but we learned from it. And again, I think that would be a piece of advice I would give to anyone that's taking over something like this. It's a huge project to rebuild a website. So not to be taken lightly.
Not at all.
Yeah, and once you get the core features down, like Chad was saying, kind of start with the basics, get everything in place, and then you can start figuring out little things to add in there. They're going to make that user experience a little bit more uplifted in what they need.
Yeah, it's not a billboard, it's a website, it's a content management
Yeah.
system. It can change, you can change imagery, you can change content. And I think the only other advice I would give is, make sure you're not creating something that you can't manage later. There's a lot of banks that go down the route of, different types of content management systems that might be more developer focused, but have all these promises of all these awesome things that they can do, and that are not more like Sitefinity, which you can do those enterprise level things, but it's really focused on that content manager. You can build something that you then can't use or have the ability to use, and then you've built a promise that can't be fulfilled.
Right. It takes huge money to get a developer to help you through working through navigating the website. And that's not what we want. So,
No, and on that note, I would just share that one of our goals was cost savings on an annual run rate, and we did achieve that. So I think that is in large part to the point that Chad was making. It's templatized. We don't have to hire developers unless we want to implement some new widget or product card or that type of thing. So we know when we're going to get into that, and we know what the price will be to do it. That way we can weigh the pros and cons and decide if it's worth it from a feature functionality perspective. But we don't have to do that to still deliver the content that's necessary. So I think that's an important thing about websites too. I mean, they can get very expensive, and we were going down that path when I started, and we knew that we couldn't sustain it because we just didn't want to spend that kind of money.
right. All right. Well, is that a wrap, or did anybody want to end with anything? All right. Well, thank you, Misty and Chad, for coming on today and telling us your story, how you've updated your website, and have a great customer experience now. And also, end users on your side, your employees have a great experience now. So thank you both for coming. And I think we will go into Q&A at this point.
Yep. So I've been monitoring some of the questions that have been coming in during the call. And so some of the questions that came in, the first one, were there any roadblocks or challenges that you wanted to talk about that, may help someone else going through a similar type of project? And I think that would be Misty or Chad could answer that for us probably.
Roadblocks. I think just getting the organization initially over the hump of, okay, we need to do this. I think you need to clearly articulate why you need to go through the process and spend the money to rebuild. That can be, I think that was our largest roadblock, was just getting buy-in throughout the organization to help us, support us in making the step. So clearly articulating what's going on and how much it's costing and what are the, why do you want to do this? I think that's critical so that you can get the whole organization behind you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Misty was dealing with internally. And what I was dealing with was HomeStreet's IT and IS team. We had a lot of meetings. They had hosted internally prior, and we were, as part of Kubera, you have to have the cloud offering,
Mm-hmm.
and which means that you're hosting with Silvertech and Azure. And that was and rightly so, a big decision. And we really had to go through due diligence. I would say double due diligence, because they weren't used to having an outside vendor host. And so we had to build our case with that team to say, here are the reasons why this is more advantageous for the bank, and here's why it's better security for the bank. So myself and our CTO really spent a lot of time with that team. I would say, months of time to multiple meetings to get through that. And because Sitefinity has that SOC 2 report and other documentation around security, it was just a process that we had to go through. I don't even know if I'd call it a roadblock so much as it was just a process so that the team could make sure they checked all the boxes and felt very, very comfortable with us hosting the site.
Great. Okay, so we have another question that came in. So how did working with Silvertech, Misty, and Sitefinity as a partner make your project successful? Like, what do you think were the success factors there as far as working with Silvertech?
I think with any project, it's making sure the lines of communication are wide open, and that when there are things that crop up, you don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call them and talk through it. And everybody's goals are to end up with again, keeping the end goal in mind. When you do that, then when you do face challenges and you can have those open lines of communication, you can pick up the phone. I mean, I had to do that a few times with Chad and the project team. So sometimes wires can get crossed, and I think it's just important that you stay on the task at hand, and you keep the lines open. And I think, and Chad, you can chime in here, but I think that was something we did really well with this project.
Yeah, I think, yes, I think there's always going to be a problem in any project, no doubt about it. I think Misty and I knew that going in and had those conversations.
Yeah.
And, Misty and I are both also, outside of the day-to-day project every single day and grinding it out like the project managers and the developers and designers and strategists are doing, and internal folks. So whenever there was an issue, text message, email, hey, let's connect, jump on the phone for a quick 30 minutes, and we could help guide the teams to resolve any issues that came up. I agree, Misty. It's a key to success, I think, is to have leadership that's communicating and understand there are going to be issues that we run into. It's how you deal with them and communicate.
Great. Okay, so I think we have time for one last question. And so the final question I'll ask for the call is, how did you get executive buy-in on the budget required to move your organization's digital maturity forward?
So we did an analysis on what the current website was, what the expenses were related to the current website, and then we documented not just the hard dollar cost, but also the soft dollar costs. So in other words, how much time our employees were required to, how much time did they spend on some of these issues? And then we showed them some of the issues for a user, which again is really key. If a user is having a hard time finding your branches, or they're having a hard time understanding when your branches are closed because you can't publish a message on the website when a closure happens that morning due to COVID, well, that's a problem. So because people come to your website for information like that. And so it was really that I suppose three-legged stool: the external costs and the soft dollar costs, so the pain it was causing our employees, and then really the pain it was causing our users. And a combination of that, you show that to executives and they get it.
And do you feel like as you made this shift over to using Kubera DX, that in the long run, you'd actually be saving money too? Is that one of the things that you kind of pointed out, is not only, what you're going to be spending, but the ROI that you're getting from this, taking on such a project?
Yes, we did. We did have cost savings, and I think it's something like a 20% annual run rate cost savings using this versus what we were doing before. But keep in mind that we were using developers. We had to, because the site was so full of custom code. So and then not to mention the cost savings on the employee side. So as you said, we don't really need to engage our IT staff any longer unless there's something that we think there might be something going on with security, like fraud or that
Mhm.
type of thing. So that's just created some efficiencies for us, for sure. Not to say that IT is not involved, and they certainly are, and they're paying attention to the hosting and all of the parameters around that. Again, I'll stay in my lane, but you know, it's a we need everybody involved for sure to make it work.
Yeah, but to do your everyday job, this change kind of shifted to put the onus or the responsibility in your hands, where you're less dependent on IT for every small little thing that you need to do.
Right, exactly. And like I said, in the previous environment, we would have to go to IT to publish the site for us every time we made a content change,
That's
which,
crazy.
you know, it was inefficient for
Yeah.
both. You know, honestly, the IT team didn't want to do that either, right? I mean, it's just it's inefficient.
I hear you. All right,
Yeah.
well, I think that's all we had time for today. Thank you so much, Misty, for joining us, and Chad for helping us out on this call today. For any questions that we weren't able to get to at the end of the call, what we'll do is we'll actually send an email follow-up with responses to any of those questions after the webinar. So thank you. Charlene, did you want to wrap up?
And that was it. That's all we have today. But thank you for joining our webinar. We appreciate you signing in and hope that Home Street Bank's story will help your DX strategy. So thank you.